It was a rainy Thursday evening in the sleepy town of Maple Creek when everything changed between them. The kind of rain that taps against the windows just softly enough to lull you into comfort, but insistently enough that you know something is brewing. The house smelled of cinnamon and roasted chicken, the kind of cozy aroma that wrapped around every memory of fall. Madison Blake had just finished setting the table, a modest wooden one that had been in the family for over 3 decades, slightly scratched but full of history. She took pride in how everything looked, the perfectly folded napkins, the flickering candles, and the polished cutlery. She always said the kitchen table was the heart of the home, and tonight, that heart was beating with something unfamiliar. Across the room, Jason Carter leaned against the doorframe, holding a wine bottle, his eyes scanning Madison more than the room. They had known each other for years, ever since her husband, Ethan, introduced them back when Jason moved to town. Jason and Ethan had been college roommates, and naturally, Jason became a close part of their lives. But Ethan had taken a job overseas 6 months ago, and Madison had been left to manage things on her own. Jason had stepped in to help from time to time, fixing leaky faucets, mowing the lawn, even bringing over groceries when he noticed she'd been too busy with work. But lately, the visits had started to feel less neighborly and more something else. Tonight wasn't supposed to be any different. Madison had invited him over for dinner as a thank you for fixing the garage door. Simple. Friendly. Just 2 people sharing a meal. But as she looked up from the table and saw the way Jason's gaze lingered on her a moment too long, something shifted. Jason placed the wine on the counter and stepped closer. "You always go all out for dinner?" he asked with a smirk, clearly impressed. "Only for people who help me not get crushed by my own garage," Madison replied, laughing as she brushed her bangs from her eyes. Their laughter danced through the kitchen like old music rediscovered. The conversation flowed effortlessly, from mundane neighborhood gossip to deeper confessions. Jason admitted he was tired of dating apps and surface-level conversations. Madison shared how much she missed the kind of connection that made you feel seen. They sipped wine, the rain falling harder outside, the warmth of the kitchen growing thicker by the minute. At some point during the evening, the dishwasher hummed to life, the clock ticked toward midnight, and Jason moved to help her clear the plates. Their hands touched briefly as they both reached for the same glass, and neither pulled away. For a split second, the world paused. No clinking plates, no rain, no clock ticking. Just them, suspended in a moment where neither dared to speak but both knew what was happening. Jason looked at her with something deeper than admiration. Madison's breath caught in her throat. "Jason," she began, unsure if it was a warning or an invitation. "I know," he said, gently setting the glass down. "I know this is unexpected, maybe even wrong. But I can't pretend I haven't felt something building between us." Madison turned away, trying to compose herself. She leaned against the table, the cool wood grounding her thoughts. "This table," she whispered, "has seen so many memories. Birthday cakes, homework battles, quiet breakfasts. It's where Ethan proposed to me. Jason walked up behind her but didn't touch her. And maybe it's about to witness something new. Something honest." She turned to face him, and for the first time, really looked at him. Not as Ethan's best friend or the neighbor who helped out, but as a man who saw her. A woman. Not just someone waiting, but someone living. It wasn't reckless. It wasn't rushed. It was a moment of truth shared between 2 people tired of pretending. They sat at the table, still sipping wine, still talking, but now their hands were intertwined. No declarations. No promises. Just presence. Eventually, the laughter returned, softer this time, laced with something more tender. Jason traced the grain of the wood with his finger. "Funny how a kitchen table can feel more sacred than a church pew," he said, voice low. Madison smiled. "Because here, no one's pretending." The evening unfolded gently, the kind of night you never expect but never forget. When Jason finally stood to leave, the rain had lightened, and the wind had quieted. He paused by the door, uncertainty in his eyes. "Will we talk about this?" he asked. Madison looked at the table, then at him. Some things don't need to be talked about. They just need to be remembered. What happened on the kitchen table stayed there. Jason nodded slowly. Then I'll remember it the right way. The days that followed were calm, if not a bit reflective. Jason still came by, still fixed things, still made her laugh. But they never spoke about that night. It wasn't a secret, exactly, but it wasn't meant for the world. It was theirs, folded into the wood of the table, absorbed like a memory that doesn't fade but also doesn't scream for attention. One afternoon, weeks later, Madison sat with her teenage daughter, Chloe, helping with schoolwork. Chloe tapped her pencil against the table and looked at her mom. "Why don't we ever get a new kitchen table? This one's old." Madison smiled, running her hand across the surface. "Because it's ours. Every scratch, every mark, it tells our story." Chloe rolled her eyes in the way only teenagers can but smiled too. Madison watched her for a moment, then looked out the window where Jason was helping a neighbor rake leaves. He caught her gaze and lifted his hand slightly in a wave. Nothing more. Madison waved back, subtle, knowing. Some stories are loud. Some are written in ink. Others are carved silently into wood, never told but never forgotten. What happened that night didn't change everything, but it changed enough. It reminded Madison that she was still alive, still capable of feeling something real. The kitchen table continued to be the heart of the home. It hosted celebrations, casual dinners, difficult conversations, and quiet mornings. And in between those moments, it held a memory. A quiet, sacred understanding between two people who needed each other at exactly the right time. Years later, when the table was finally replaced, Madison stood beside the movers as they lifted it carefully out the door. She ran her fingers over the edge one last time, smiled, and whispered, "Thank you." She didn't cry. She didn't explain. Because what happened on the kitchen table stayed there. And that was exactly how it should be.